All right. So what I will do for the next hour or so is to talk about anything that you guys might have, any questions you might have about the exam. So anybody want to get us started? No? All right, good. So the first question is about the encomienda system. Let's talk about that for a second. So the encomienda system, we're talking about what country? Spain, good. So this is shortly after the Spanish started to come over to the Americas, North America specifically, Central America. And after they pretty much mined the sources they could from local tribes, Aztec, Inca, there was no more civilizations to conquer and steal from. They had to move on to Plan B. Plan B was to use the land that they stole. And so the encomienda system was the plan to use that land that they took from the natives. We say there were a couple of parts to the encomienda system. All right, this was kind of the labor part. You were able to, if you were going to come over to the Americas, you were able to get this big, large plot of land. And the encomienda system pretty much said you can use the natives for labor on this land. Now, there was kind of an exchange involved. Yes, you can use the natives as labor source, but in return, you were expected to do what? Remember? Educate them, expose them to Christianity, take care of them, feed them, clothe them, protect them. And what we saw is this system got abused very quickly and very often. The Spanish were very easy and quick to use the labor, but were not so quick to fulfill their end of the bargain, taking care of the natives for the labor they gave them. That's the big thing in the encomienda system. What else? All right, what about it? Different religious, so denominations are different groups, so different religious groups. So if that was on the study guide, we're talking about like the Jesuits, the Anabaptists, the Presbyterians, the Calvinists. Oh, Joe? All right, so again, we're back to Spain. One of the ways that the Spanish economy worked was that guild system. And this was saying that only a certain group of people could perform a certain task. So examples of the guild system we talked about were like the Carpenters Guild or the Tailors Guild, the Blacksmith Guild. So you had to be a master craftsman to be in this guild. And we said this just kind of had some pros and cons. The pros, the product you're going to get is probably going to be superior quality. Great stuff because it's being made by an expert at that craft. But because it is made by an expert, it is such high quality, it is going to be what? Very expensive. It's going to cost a lot of money. And so this made a lot of the Spanish goods unavailable to a lot of people in Spain. They just couldn't afford them. So they bought the foreign goods. That's one of the reasons why Spain lost a lot of that wealth they gained from their colonies. They did not have a good plan for their economy.
So Francisco Petrarch was seen as the father, and isn't like what made him the father?
So he's one of the first guys, this is back in the Renaissance, one of the first guys to really go back over some of the old ancient writings. Petrarch was kind of obsessed with some of the old Greek and Roman texts. And so he was one of the first ones to really kind of put an emphasis on what was previously written. One of the big ones he was a fan of was an old lawyer named Cicero. He was really big into some of the old Cicero writings. And so Petrarch kind of gets that label, the father of humanism, because he really kind of started this whole, let's go back over some of the old stuff and make it that important again. Joel?
What was the
Reconquista? All right, so you guys are hanging around Spain a lot. So Reconquista in Spain, this was the reconquering, trying to remove these non-Catholic groups from Spain. Jews and Muslims were the two big groups that were targeted through various laws, various actions. It took a long time. This was not a quick event. This was, many years to eventually get them out of Spain and make it as solidly Catholic as possible. We said one of the big drawbacks of the Reconquista is this is a big chunk of the Spanish middle class, the merchants, your businessmen that are being removed from the country. And this was going to be pretty hurtful to the Spanish economy as well. Add that to the guild system, and you can see why the Spanish Gilded Age didn't last very long.
Can you explain what the Great Schism was?
So Great Schism, we're going way back. So this was the official split of the Christian church, where countries or places that are going to be more into the West, your Frances, your Spains, they were going to be dominated by the Catholic Church, and their kind of their home base was going to be in Rome, where the Pope is. Whereas the places more in the East, specifically Russia, Greece, they were going to adopt the Orthodox Church. And their home base was going to be out of Constantinople, eventually Istanbul. So it was the split of the Christian church between the Orthodox East and the Catholic West.
Was there a difference?
Yes, different. So just like we saw a difference in Protestants and Catholics, they worshipped differently, still under the umbrella of Christianity, both Christian religions, but just how they practiced their services and how their tenets they believed in, they were different. Great Schism. Orthodox was over in the East, so Greece, Russia, those were the two big ones for the Orthodox Church in the East. In the West was the Catholic Church. So your East was centered out of Constantinople, your West was centered out of Rome. Okay.
Edward and Mary and Elizabeth.
All right, starting with whom and going to whom?
More like what they did in the
Okay. All right. Edward didn't do a whole lot. He wasn't ruling very long. He is going to inherit the throne after Henry VIII dies. He's going to take over at a very young age. He's a teenager. Only rules for, I think, 9 years, and that's about it. The only thing that was really of significance was a slight shift in religious preference from the Anglican Church of his dad to more of a general Protestant view that was more rooted in kind of Western European ideas. But outside of that, that's really all Edward was known for, was a slight shifting of religious preferences. Who else? Yep, Mary's going to be after Edward dies. Major shift of religion here. We're going to go from Protestant all the way where? Back to Catholic. Super, super Catholic. She got it from her mom, Catherine of Aragon. Super, super Catholic lady. She was very much her mother's daughter and was extremely intolerant of non-Catholics. She loved attacking any Protestants or old Anglicans, had many of them executed for failure to convert to Catholicism, and the nickname Bloody Mary comes from that. Doesn't rule that long herself either, kind of gets run out of town, heads over to Spain, marries Philip II, but is not ruling very long. So. Oh yeah, sorry, quick, going back a little bit with Henry VIII. The Catholic Church does not really believe in the idea, the concept of divorce. They do believe in the idea, the concept of an annulment, which is very similar. The annulment just says it was never really a thing in the first place. It's like taking the eraser out and saying, this should have never happened, so therefore I'm undoing it. And Henry VIII is trying to get one of these from his wife, Catherine of Aragon, because he feels like his marriage is cursed and he will not have his male heir with Catherine. Most times getting an annulment was easy, was kind of formality. You sent the Pope a letter with a nice bag of cash. Pope said, sure, you're annulled, have fun. But this time the Pope did not grant his annulment because of how closely aligned Catherine's family was with the current Pope. So he rejected it, didn't want to piss off Catherine's family, but it ended up pissing off Henry, and he left the Catholic Church. Born right out of it. Yep. Calvinism. So one of the many Protestant faiths we saw this year, the big tenet of Calvinism was their belief in what idea? What made them unique? Predestination, yeah. That, your actions are meaningless, doesn't matter what you do. You have no impact whatsoever on you getting into heaven or not getting into heaven. As soon as you're born, it's already determined if you're going up or down. That was the big thing that made Calvinism unique. And if you were one of those lucky chosen people to get into heaven, you were part of a group called what? The elect, right? That's basically the big thing. His ideas start to spread pretty quickly, like Luther's ideas did. That's where we get the Presbyterian Church from, was a offshoot of Calvinism. Sorry? Clement Exchange, the things going back and forth across the Atlantic. Usually it's goods, not people. They usually break it up into the slave trade, referring to the African slaves that were shipped across the Atlantic, the Columbian Exchange being everything else. So all of those foods and animals, diseases that were shipped back and forth post Columbus's trip. So the things that were coming, from Europe over to the Americas, usually in the form of livestock. They brought over horses, they brought over cows and pigs and sheep. So all those animals were foreign to America until the Europeans showed up. Going the other direction, things coming from the Americas, usually produce, different kinds of agricultural products. We talked about tomatoes, corn, potatoes, things like that, that were foreign to Europe until these trades in the Columbian Exchange. Sure. All right, so Elizabeth I, we're back in England. This is the middle child that Henry VIII had. This is the child that he had with Anne Boleyn. She's going to be really inheriting a tough situation. She comes in after Mary and her big conquest or trying to make everybody Catholic. So Elizabeth has a tough go at it to begin with. And so she tries to make as many people happy as possible by trying to blend Protestants and Catholics in this new version of the Anglican Church 2.0. And she tries to make the Catholics happy by saying that we're going to have a lot of the same ceremonies, pretty much kind of follow the same church calendar that the Catholics did. We're going to make the Protestants happy by allowing the priests to get married. They're going to have some of the same services of the Protestant church, but it ends up making both sides kind of angry. But you mentioned the challenges. Elizabeth got some challenges, internal and external. Internal challenges, people are saying, Elizabeth, you're spending way too much money, that you're bankrupting England. They did have some facts that that's based in. She did spend a lot of money. That was true. Who said she spent it on things like what? Colonies. These were good investments. These were really things that were not wasteful spending. They were going to make money in the long run. But it did take some time. So most people inside of England, their big challenge to her was, cool it with the checkbook. You're spending lots of money. Outside of England, she got a major challenge from what foreign country? Big time, Spain. Philip II and Elizabeth had a huge rivalry. We talked about the English fleet fighting the Spanish Armada several times, English fleet being very successful. Philip II kind of underestimated Elizabeth. He took her for granted, didn't think she was going to be that strong of a ruler or that really good militarily, and he surprised her. She surprised him, sorry. She was really good. So the biggest challenge she got externally was from Philip II in Spain. Lots of military battles there. She really made Spain mad by sending out people like Francis Drake to rob the Spanish ships in the Atlantic. All that good Spanish gold they were bringing back over. He was really good at attacking those ships and stealing them and really got Spain angry. So internally, spending money. Externally, Philip II in Spain. Andrea? All right, so let's start with it. What were indulgences? Yeah, all right, here's some money. and now I can save my soul or family member's soul from purgatory. I can get them out of purgatory and into heaven quicker. They don't have to wait there as long. And so this was a practice the Catholic Church kind of got drunk with. They realized this was a way to make lots of money. And so the Catholic Church kept pushing these indulgences again and again and again. And eventually it took people like Martin Luther to read the Bible to say, I've read this thing cover to cover, and I didn't see anything about indulgences here in the Bible. But I did find things that said to have faith, ask for forgiveness. And that was how you got into heaven, not thou shalt pay me $50. And so that was his big problem with the church, was the practice of selling indulgences. I didn't think that was very Christian at all. All right, so we're in Japan now, alternate attendance policy. So we went through the process. It was kind of painstakingly to try to unite all the daimyo. It was finally united under what daimyo? Ieyasu. Ieyasu was able to unite the Japanese daimyo, and he wanted to make sure they stayed united. And so there were a couple of aspects to the policy. First off, all the daimyo had to do what? What was the first thing they had to do? That's right. Pack your bags. You're moving to Tokyo, you're moving to the capital, bringing your family, everything you have with you. You got to stay there how long? At least a year. Why does he want them in that capital for that year? Why come to Tokyo in the first place? All right. Yeah, get together. What else? Get work done. Same reason our senators, our congressmen go to Washington, D.C. Let's get work done. Let's have them together. Let's bring together daimyo. Let's get to work. And yeah, we just had the Warring States period. Lots of fighting was going on. You guys got to get over this. You got to figure out through your differences, work through it. You know, if it takes, handshake and hugging, well, handshake and hug. We'll get over it. We got to get through this. We got to work together. And after that year, if the daimyos wanted to, what could they do? Yeah, go home, check up on things. Head back down to Tennessee, make sure everything is going well down there. But if you do go to Tennessee to check on things, what do you have to do first? Leave the family. Just in case you don't go home to Tennessee and try to plan some kind of rebellion. Maybe the Civil War would have been avoided if we did that. So that was a way to kind of keep everything united, make sure all that hard work was not just going to go away. Extremely successful. Ieyasu nailed that one. Okay, so Huguenots. We'll start off with Henry IV, who early on was what religion? Protestant. He was a Huguenot, right? And he was about to marry a Catholic. This was Catherine de' Medici's daughter. And the wedding started what big event? St. Bartholomew's Day Massacre, where the Catholics attacked and killed quite a few Huguenots, the Protestants. The wedding did eventually get completed. Henry will inherit the throne. He becomes Henry IV. He was Henry of Navarre before, Henry IV. And one of the first things he does to try to win over the Huguenots, well, first off, why are the Huguenots upset with him? What does Henry do pretty early on? Converts to Catholicism. Gets lots of pressure to become a Catholic. He does. But to make sure the Huguenots aren't too mad at him, writes what piece of legislation? Ace of Knots, which said what? Yeah. No bullying, no discriminating, no fighting against the Huguenots. You guys are safe. You're protected. Don't have to worry about any attacks coming from the Catholics. Made that an official kind of like hate crime. So Edith Knott said, Huguenots, you guys are cool. Don't worry about it. You're going to be safe. And it worked. Huguenots had their bags packed, ready to go after the St. Bartholomew's Day Massacre and Henry's conversion to Catholicism. They were ready to peace out of there. So Edith Knott kept the Huguenots around France. This is a good move. Who's going to tear that piece up? Nope. 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 14th. Louis XIV ripped it up. Louis XIV will cancel the Edict of Nantes. He does this after the death of Jean-Baptiste Colbert, who was kind of one of the voices of reason for Louis XIV. This was a dumb move. This did nothing to really help out things in France. I don't know. All right, what was the idea of mercantilism? Pretty quickly, what 3 words? Good. Wealth or money equals power. The more money your country had, it was thought the more power you had.
So the Gutenberg Bible, was that different from the Bible, or was it just like an
It was the first one kind of done mass produced. Yeah, previously if you wanted a Bible, it was literally, Genesis, get out a pen, write it again. Yeah.
It was still the same, like,
More or less, yeah. It was definitely going to be more, definitely not the Catholic Bible. It was going to be more of Luther's Bible, Luther's ideas. All right, so they were the foreign invaders. Remember we talked about the Ming Dynasty came over when they drove the Mongols out of China. And so after the Ming Dynasty was wide open to be invaded, they were invaded by what group? Manchus, good. I'm up north. Manchu started the Qing Dynasty. The first major Qing Dynasty ruler we saw was who? It was Ming. Yep, Kangxi. We said Kangxi, good politician. He knows what people want to hear. He said, I'm going to try to make you guys really happy. You're going to love me when I do what for you? Lower your taxes. Pay me less money. People said, I like that. You're a good man. I support you. And so they were the foreigners, the Manchus, the Ming Dynasty, or the Qing Dynasty. So they had a tough job ahead of them to try to win over the people they just conquered. And so one of the ways to do that, Kangxi brilliantly said, we're going to lower your taxes. They loved that. Kangxi was also very open to the outside world. That's just something the Ming Dynasty, for the most part, was as well. Kangxi loved it when the Jesuits came in, told them about what's going on in the outside world, brought up, the current events, new ideas about science, medicine, engineering, things like that. After Kangxi, who's the next big Qing ruler? Qianlong, good. And what was he known for? What was his big deal? Helping people, big time. All right, Qianlong was one of the super hardworking emperors. He wanted to lead by example. We have lots of anecdotal stories about him stopping his royal carriage, getting out, helping the farmers, working the fields. Also went a long way to try to win over the support and loyalty of the people as well. Yep. So agricultural reforms. After fighting the Mongols, lots of the agricultural land was destroyed. So we're going to have to try to spend some time and effort getting that land back to producing crops again. So agricultural reforms, we're going to start to grow things like rice, sugarcane, and cotton. Those are good trading materials, a lot of good cash crops. So agricultural reforms were a big thing, pretty high up on his list. He's also going to make some societal reforms, trying to get rid of the Mongol past. Anything that was maybe written or made people think about the Mongols, we're going to try to get rid of that. And the big one about how government leaders were chosen. He's going to use what? Civil service exams, right. Forms of French government. Absolute monarch, all the way through Louis XVI. Yep. Yep. So let me finish. Okay. Absolute monarchy, all the way through Louis XVI. French Revolution hits. We're going to have our first major change when we've got that French Constitution of 1791, which is going to change from an absolute monarchy to what? Limited or a constitutional monarchy. When the monarch is going to serve the executive role, and what's the other branch going to be? Legislative Assembly, good. Not the National Assembly, we've got to rename it. So it becomes a limited or constitutional monarchy with the Legislative Assembly ruling. But then we had things like the war with Austria, Louis' attempt to flee the country. This is going to clue the people of France in that this system's not working really well. So they called the National Convention. Let's do this all over again. And they declared France to be what? Republic, which got rid of what office? They're out. What else is out? Monarch is out. Both are gone. Now, a republic just simply means you've got people representing the citizens in government. Kind of like what we have here. We elect senators. We elect representatives to go to Washington and make decisions for us. That is what France became. Except they combined legislative and executive powers into this new republic. They didn't separate those. The executive group was inside those legislative people. And that was that little 12-man group Robespierre eventually got control of, called what? Committee of Public Safety. And it was through being the head of the Committee of Public Safety, Robespierre started to get the most power in France. Until he went a little nuts, Reign of Terror. They executed Robespierre and started again. And they said, we're going to separate the powers. That didn't work out really well. So we're going to have that two-house legislative branch separate, and then we're going to have another group in charge of the executive branch, and that was that group of officials called what? The Directory. Absolute monarch, limited monarch, republic, and then we got the two-house legislature and the Directory. So just to think of, in the U.S. history, we have our Constitutional Convention. Group of delegates, representatives get together to try to plan and figure out where to go next, what to do next. And that's what that was about.
So what was the difference between the Directory and the Committee of Public Safety?
Committee of Public Safety, well, they're both going to kind of serve the same thing. The Committee of Public Safety was within the French Republic, all those people. Then once that is gone, we start something brand new. They're both going to be executive groups, except one was full of Radical Jacobins, the Committee of Public Safety. The Directory was more middle-of-the-road moderates to prevent Robespierre's from taking over.
So were they both under the Republic or two?
Committee of Public Safety first. That was under the Republic. And once we changed again to the two-house legislature and the Directory. Ownership.
Did you go over like Balboa and Cortez and like what?
Balboa, we had just like what, a couple bullet points on. He was the first European to head west, and he was the first one to step foot on and see what? Pacific Ocean. That's about it. All right, Cortez. Now, he's a huge one. Cortez coming over from Spain, trying to find El Dorado, looking for all of his riches. They say that if you're going to find El Dorado, it's probably going to be what civilization? Aztecs. Good. He meets the leader of the Aztecs. What was his name? Montezuma II. Good. Was able to defeat him pretty easily thanks to modern weaponry, thanks to native help. We mentioned Malinche, the translator. That was a big help. Chemical warfare, biological warfare, diseases, brought over smallpox, killed off a lot of natives, and got filthy rich off of Aztec treasure.
Can you explain secularism?
Secularism, non-religious.
So the church didn't like that, right?
Oh, absolutely not.
So then what was the type of writing that made satire? So satires make people make fun at the church, so the church didn't like either of them. Right?
Correct. Yep. Now, the church kind of liked some of the secular ideas when they started getting very corrupt before the Reformation hit. You know, they were very much into secular ideas like drinking and gambling and, you know, taking advantage of women and things like that. They were all about the secular pleasures. That was what Martin Luther said. You got to cut that out. Yeah. But in general, you'd hope, yeah, the church would not necessarily like some of those. They'd be more worried about spiritual needs, taking care of, you know, the congregation that way. All right, Peace of Augsburg, what did that say? Ooh, that's a good one. Anybody?
Did that end the end something?
And it said that you could do what? That's right. The German princes could choose the religion for their people. This is pretty much, you've got two choices. You can check the box that says we're going to be what kind of country? Catholic, or check the box that says Protestant. Correct. And this really was just for what we know as the Holy Roman Empire, the Central European places like the Germanic states, places that are east of France. This was not a European-wide thing. But it settled the dispute, like Selena said. It made the religious conflicts go away for a while until we've got lots of other groups that pop up, and the religious conflict comes flying back. 30 Years' War. All right, Courtier, got that a lot today. Courtier, this was the book written by Baldassare Castiglione. This is the book that laid out the ideas for what the Renaissance man, Renaissance woman should be. This was that handbook. This was that guidebook. A Renaissance man, should be well-versed in many areas of study. Don't just be a painter. Be a painter. Be an inventor. Be a writer. Be a musician. Be somebody that's good at lots of different things. Oh, we just did him. Probably a few minutes.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
I forgot who asked that question.
That was me.
Oh, yeah.
How the big Reformation and decline.
Lots of bad rulers. Kind of started to close off from a lot of trading with a lot of other people, especially after they thought was a failure of the Zheng He trips. But eventually, a lot of bad rulers led to the invasion of the Manchus. The dynastic cycle. Yeah. Claim the mandate of heaven. Have some big event that prove that you had the mandate of heaven. Things go well. Then some things start to happen internally. People start to say you lose the mandate of heaven. You're overthrown. Some new group takes over, and the whole cycle starts again. Correct. That's a Hongwu. Drove out the Mongols. I demonstrated I've got the mandate of heaven. The gods look fairly upon me. It's the only way I could have done that. Yeah. Albrecht Dürer, one of my favorite artists. All right, so you're in the Northern Renaissance. He was a German artist. Did do some works with painting, but was more well known for what? The woodcuts, the engravings, right. A lot of his woodcuts and engravings blended religion and mythology. Was obsessed with the book of Revelations, end of the world. A lot of his paintings deal with the world coming to an end. But because he did lots of these really great famous woodcuts that were easily reproducible, each one of these plates could produce hundreds of copies. Though that really was a big, easy way to spread those ideas throughout Europe. You could just print off hundreds of copies and send them out. Bruegel, okay, so you're staying in Northern Renaissance. Bruegel was an artist. He's not going to do the woodcuts. Bruegel is going to be a very colorful artist, focus on detail, like to paint everyday life situations, large groups of people. We saw that painting of the children's games, all the stuff going on. But just to show you that the focus of painting did start to spread outside of Italy, and he was from a place called Flanders, which is another part of Germany. That's the area he was from, Flanders. So we're having James II in charge of England. They fought in Parliament hard if they were going to let him be the next ruler, not be the next ruler, because he was what? Catholic. The Parliament eventually said, you can, don't worry about it. He's only got a daughter. There's no son. There's not going to be a line of succession of other Catholic rulers until he does have a son. And then Parliament gets kind of freaked out about, oh gosh, here we go again, more Catholic rulers. So they invited his daughter and her husband to do what? To invade, come overthrow them. This was William and Mary from the Netherlands. Showed up with their army, their military, ready to fight. James pretty much ran away and abdicated the throne, and William and Mary took over in a more or less bloodless revolution. Now it's called the Glorious Revolution. Absolutely, yep. And pretty much officially turned England from an absolute monarchy to a limited constitutional. Yeah. Oh yeah, so they were all based around what ideas? Nope, that hadn't happened yet. Cromwell wanted to make England very, very what? Puritan, yeah, puritanical. So all those things we saw from that little funny video, all the things about no fun, no sports, no singing, no music, no games, no theater. All of those he tried to impose on England, and actually kind of topical now, even got rid of what holiday? Christmas, got rid of it. No Christmas. James I, Charles I, Cromwell, Charles II, James II, William and Mary. James I, Charles I, Oliver Cromwell, Charles II, James II, Will and Mary. Not Will and Grace. It's a different deal.
Do you want to, so for early the very beginning of the Renaissance, for Rome, Florence, Rome, Naples, Venice, and Milan. Do you want
All the
to,
city-states.
Yes, sir. Do you want to know like why they're important? Just like those are like some of the city-states.
What do you mean by why they're important? Such as what?
Like I seen the video saying how like one of them controlled like farming.
Oh, no.
So just to know that they were city-states.
That, as far as I would go, yeah. 30 minutes or so if you want it. Okay. Michel de Montaigne. He was the big skeptic at the time, said that old ideas are constantly being replaced what? New ideas over and over again. You know, said that you can never have absolute knowledge. Got out a lot of his ideas how? More specific. Wrote in what? Nope. He particularly did not write in books. He wrote something shorter. Kind of. Something you might see on some tests. No. Essays. He brought out the technique, the right technique of the essay. So Montaigne, skeptic, essay, old ideas being replaced with new ones. All right, back in China. So China, being the dominant power in Asia, could kind of enact this tribute system where smaller, weaker countries would give a gift to China. Tribute, the actual tribute was a payment, was a gift. It could be money. It could be a valuable item. It could be crops. It could be whatever they agreed upon. And it was a payment that showed several things. It demonstrated submission. It acknowledged that, yes, China, you are the stronger, bigger, more powerful country. Also, China required tribute in order to do what? All right, be protected. That's right. I'm not going to protect countries that don't pay me. What else? And trade. I'm not going to trade with countries that aren't paying tribute either. So, protection, trade, and submission. That was the main role of the tribute. All right, Copernicus was the first one to really push what idea? Heliocentrism, which challenged what old idea? Geocentrism, that's right. Was never really that forceful with his ideas on heliocentrism. He knew he had to be very careful with what he published, what he said, for fear of any kind of retribution from the Catholic Church. But he does eventually, towards the end of his life, put his name out there on this idea of heliocentrism. He had some problems, though, which the main one was what? Couldn't prove it. All right, church easily came back and said, that's a cute idea, Copernicus. Can you prove it? Sorry, man, I can't. That was the big thing that he ran into. But first one to really kind of put his name out there and really push forward the idea of heliocentrism that will eventually be proven thanks to Brahe and Kepler. What did it, what? Earth-centered. Earth's in the middle, doesn't move. Everything revolves around it. Sun revolves around it, moon, planets, everything. Oh, no. The mix from Brahe's. So the heliogeocentric thing. At that one, Earth is still at the center. We've got to satisfy geocentric. So Earth is in the middle, stationary. To make the heliocentric people happy, Brahe says, yes, the planets do revolve around the sun. You're right on that part. While the sun revolves around the Earth. So Earth at the middle, not moving. Planets move around the sun, while the sun is revolving around Earth. Very confusing.
Wait, so this is what I was thinking, like, is it geocentric or geo?
I think it's heliogeo, but I don't know.
And so then that was a theory by Brahe.
Yep.
And he got a lot of evidence. We didn't know how to put it together until his assistant Kepler. So Kepler was on like figuring it all out.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, because Brahe never could prove it because he's working with a crappy model. You can't prove something that doesn't exist. That's what he's trying to do. Until Kepler says, well, let's try to prove something else, and it worked. Start with what now? This is what now? What are you talking about? All right, Brahe's idea, yes. Earth in the middle does not move. It's stationary. Sun moves around the Earth, but all the planets move around the sun while it is moving around the Earth. All right, so we're James the First, back in England. You've got a lot of people that do not like the fact that England has strayed away from the Catholic Church. So you have a group of Catholics, 13 of them, plan to blow up Parliament to send a message. And so these 13 people, including the famous one, Guy Fawkes, rented out space under Parliament, put in all of these barrels of gunpowder, and were planning on blowing it up on November the 5th. Then we have the moron that was part of the group that sent the letter to his brother, who was a member of Parliament, told him, hey, you might want to stay home that day. And they investigated why, turned it over to the authorities, and found the gunpowder. Who was what? We mentioned Michel de Montaigne. René Descartes was a big skeptic as well, but the one that Tony asked about was Montaigne. First. We hate you non-Catholics. We want to become a Catholic nation. Yes, we like Mary. We hate you, James. Bloody Mary, Mary the First, or Mary Queen of Scots. Any of the good Catholic folks. We like you guys. Okay. Start again. What's the first part? Okay. The orbits. This is what Kepler will eventually prove. First law of planetary motion, that planets don't move in these perfect circular orbits like Copernicus said. They're these oval, elliptical shapes. They used that in the model to show how that would make planets appear to look like they go backwards sometimes. The epicycles is just a bunch of crap that doesn't happen. But the elliptical orbit does. That was Kepler's first law of planetary motion.
So just to clarify, the Catholic Catholicism was a denomination under Christianity.
Yes, if you want to call it that, yes. No, Elizabeth I is the Elizabethan age. Mary comes before. So she is going to, she's maybe cousin, I think, of Elizabeth. I'm not sure what the familial relationship is, but literally was the Queen of Scotland, north of England. Very strong Catholic. A lot of Catholics in England kind of were hoping that she would come down and be the next one, but instead you got James, who was a good Protestant instead. So they didn't get what they wanted on that side of the family. Tony? We're going to get into that a little more later, but we're basically just kind of gave the definition. Doing the greatest good for the greatest number of people. There are not going to be any questions on utilitarianism. We're going to wait till next semester for that one. Oh, love these guys. Hobbes and Locke. Both have different views about what idea. Social contract. Let's start with Hobbes. Hobbes, when it came to the social contract, what was his particular stance? Why was he different from Locke? Hobbes said what about social contract? That's it. Unchallengeable. Social contract is written in stone. Nothing you can do about it. Once you buy it, no returns. No refunds, no exchanges. Social contract. People hand over their rights to the government. In return, get law and order, security, protection in return. Hobbes said that was absolute. Hobbes said people are terrible human beings. They are sinful by nature. And because of that, you got to have what kind of government? Oh, maybe, but what else? Strong, super strong. You got to have an entirely strong government, which is where we get the name of his book from. A government strong as what? A Leviathan. That's right. And we know that this kind of makes sense for Hobbes because he grew up during what major event in England? English Civil War. All right, he saw the people rising up against and eventually overthrowing the monarch. Saw how chaotic this period was. Saw what happened when you did not have a monarch strong enough to put down this rebellion. Made total sense. He's a product of his time. Just as Locke was, who grew up during what big event? Glorious Revolution. This amazing event, very peaceful. Nobody really got hurt. We said the Glorious Revolution was a more or less bloodless transition of power. Thought human beings are naturally good. Left alone, they will govern themselves, like we saw in England. And he said that government should be strong enough to do what? Which were? Property. And if they didn't protect those, what? Take them out. Yep. You have the right to revolution. Liberty, equality, fraternity. Puritans were the Roundheads. Royalists, that's English Civil War.
So, Rousseau write the book called Social Contract.
Yep.
So, and he believed in John Locke.
More of Locke's idea. Yep.
Okay,
Did not agree with Hobbes.
So he basically made a book about Locke's ideas.
Hmm? All right, Peyton, you've been quiet. Give me a question.
Okay,
Carson, you're next. Mason, what you got? Hudson, look for a question. Wad, look for a question. Kowtows, China. So that was a Chinese ritual. That was the other part. If you're going to trade with China, got to pay tribute, got to perform the kowtow ritual, bowing all the way down in front of them, forehead touches the ground. Another sign of submission, showing respect. We said most people were cool with doing this. Who was not cool with the kowtow? British, yeah, we're not doing that. Forget that. That's it. Thermidor reaction. We're rising up against Robespierre. Eventually, yeah, send him to the guillotine. Hey, what you got? All right, Frederick the Great. From where is he from? Prussia. Good. All right. So one of the Prussian leaders, Frederick the Great, he's going to be one of the enlightened despots we saw. He's going to embrace those ideas of the Enlightenment. He is going to enact some more religious tolerant laws. He's going to be cool with whatever religion you want. What else did he have that was kind of like an enlightened despot? That's right. And why might he say, I'm against cruel and unusual punishments? All right, yeah, what his dad made him witness. That's right. But he always is going to be the head of Prussia, strong military group. It's going to have lots of battles with Maria Theresa and win almost all of them. Frederick the Great, Frederick the Second. René Descartes, one half of the scientific method, along with Francis Bacon. René Descartes was the extreme skeptic, doubted everything down to what? Yeah, himself, his own existence. Cogito ergo sum. What was that? I think, therefore I am. What you got? All right, so after the Protestant Reformation, which is the Martin Luther, 95 Theses, all that stuff, eventually the Catholic Church is going to have to look in the mirror and say, we need to make some adjustments. We need to make some changes or we're screwed. And so leading the charge was Ignatius of Loyola. He's one that came up with the Society of Jesus. And in his book, Spiritual Exercises, was able to kind of form this group of Catholic reformers. And they really had this kind of reflective, soul-searching moment. They addressed things like the selling of indulgences. They addressed the things like how to get into heaven and salvation. But the Catholic Reformation was the Catholic Church trying to reform itself. And that was in response to all the challenges they had from outside the Catholic Church, thanks to the Martin Luthers and the John Calvins of the world. Catholic Counter-Reformation. Wrote the book Spiritual Exercises, created the Society of Jesus, later was called the what? Jesuits, who were huge, huge fans of what? What's the biggest thing they're going to push? Education, schools. That's right. All the Jesuit colleges, the Jesuit schools. This was going to be a huge thing for the Catholic Church going forward. Good move. Printing press, movable type, spreading ideas, one of the most important inventions in human history. Council of Trent, so going back to the Counter-Reformation, the Catholic Reformation, Council of Trent was meant to try to make sure that these Catholic changes were going to continue going forward. They would be this group of bishops, it was a council of bishops. 9, I think, were on there. And they were charged with kind of hearing new ideas or new challenges, new things that maybe needed to be changed and fixed within the church. And this group of bishops would be the ones to make those changes. Just kind of make sure the Catholic Church is operating smooth. Yeah, so a lot of the changes they did were very similar to Luther's ideas. They eventually started to shift in the direction that, faith and good works were required for salvation. And that was the big thing Martin Luther was pushing, is that's what's in the Bible. And so, yeah, eventually the Council of Trent and the Catholic Church started to, go in that direction, but never, ever going to give Luther credit for it, though. Petition of Right, so Charles I in England, trying to limit the amount of power he had. had things like you could not raise any taxes without Parliament giving you the approval. You could not throw someone in jail without a good reason. No martial law during peacetime. That's one I'm missing. There's 4 things. No taxes, jail, martial law. Yeah. Oh, soldiers. Don't have to house soldiers unless you don't want to. He's going to sign the document because he wants the money. Pretty much ignores it immediately. Really makes the people mad. Hudson, give me a question. What you got? All right, good. So we got a couple that we looked at during the time with Frederick the Great and Maria Theresa. First one was the War of Austrian Succession. This was fought over that territory of Silesia. All these great materials in Silesia, lots of very important land, good agricultural land, good industry. Really important territory. Maria Theresa walked in and claimed it for Austria. Doesn't take long for Frederick the Great to go, I want that. And they fought over it. Now, the big thing we talked about here were those weird alliances. The first time, the War of Austrian Succession, we know Maria Theresa was able to get help from the Hungarian king. That was the cute baby story. And she was able to go and get what far-off ally to help her out? English, Great Britain. Got the English to help out. Because the English are helping out, Prussia is able to get an easy ally from whom? France. War of Austrian Succession, won by whom? Yeah, Prussia's fighting, Prussia wins. After the War of Austrian Succession, we see them picking up in the 7 Years' War, otherwise known as what in the Americas? French and Indian War. But 7 Years' War back in Europe. So after a while, Maria Theresa and Austria, they're going to approach France and say, hey, listen, I know we were on opposite sides in this last conflict. Let's, we're neighbors, let's be buddies, and let's be friends. And they agree to an alliance. This is Austria and France. To which Prussia picks up the phone quickly and calls up Great Britain and says, come join me, fight the French over here. You're already fighting them in the Americas, let's fight them again. And so those allies switch sides in the 7 Years' War. Prussia's fighting, who wins? Prussia wins again. Carson, give me a question. All right, Catherine the Great. We only talked to her about just a really short little bit. The only things we know about her, enlightened despot, try to embrace a lot of those ideas of the Enlightenment, abolish serfdom, more religious freedom, got rid of torture. But the Russian people, the peasants, didn't handle it really well. They started to riot and fought for even more rights and more freedoms. And so Catherine the Great said, fine, if you can't handle this much freedom, you'll handle no freedom. And removed all those privileges and said, nobles, you're in charge. Take care of them. They're your problem. You deal with it. And so re-established serfdom and brought back all those old ideas. She didn't think the people of Russia could handle it. Charles II, what about him? Charles II Act. There's a Charles II of England. Usually prisoners of war. That was the big way. Lose a battle, lose your freedom for a little bit, get into a lot of debt. That could get you into slavery, a debtor. Those were the two big ways. I don't know. Not giving an exam. Well, you have no notes by him either, so. Yeah. What else we got? Grayson, you've been quiet. What you got? Give me another one. It's been a while. All right, why are you looking at one? I had a question from somebody earlier today, wanted to know about the salons and why they were important. What were the salons? Yeah, social gatherings, usually thrown by whom? Women. They are going to put on the events. They're going to make sure that there are going to be these good social parties that were going on. Anybody could attend, men and women alike. And this was a way that you could more freely express yourself and get your ideas out there. We've seen that it's kind of tough sometimes if you've got some controversial opinions, that if you print them, that can have some pretty devastating consequences. Ask Galileo how that turned out. So the salons were a good way to get your ideas out there without having to worry about the government arresting you for what your ideas are. We talked about the salons being a wonderful way for someone like Dennis Diderot to get his idea for the encyclopedia, not just the ideas, but the funding for it as well. She's also asking about Jean-Paul Marat. Jean-Paul Marat was from what political group? Jacobins, and they were conservative radical, super radical. That's right. He was a lawyer, made some bad decisions, got so poor he had to live where for a while? In the sewer. What happened to him down there? Skin disease made him spend a lot of time where? In the bathtub, medicinal bath. This also gave him a lot of time to do what while he's in the bath? Right. He wrote for that newspaper. Remember the name of it? L'Ami du Peuple, the people's voice, people's friend of the people. And the big thing he wrote about kind of had this similar theme. They were wanting what? Yeah, executions, death. They wanted more heads. Very, very violent ideas. In fact, he was one of the main ones calling for the execution of whom? What king was that? Louis XVI. And all of the violence that Marat was writing about drew the attention of what young lady? Charlotte Corday, who will eventually do what? Stab him in the bathtub. Reform Pope. So we're going back to our Catholic Reformation that you guys were asking about. So he's going to be the one that approves the Jesuits. You guys are doing a great job. Keep it up. He's going to be the one to kind of embrace some of these Catholic Reformation ideas. He's kind of this is a big deal. This Pope is actually saying, yeah, we do need to change. We do need to, make some tweaks here and there with regards to religion, which was kind of unheard of at the time. So he kind of gets the nickname the Reform Pope, but he's the one that approves a lot of those Catholic changes. Really saves the religion. It's good. Not really. There were quite a few that were loving that idea. This is awesome. Bread riot. Mm-hmm. Yeah, bread riot's what made Louis and Marie leave Versailles, go back to Paris. Peasant revolt happened after the storming of the Bastille, and thinking there was going to be some kind of retribution, great fear coming their way. And so the peasants kind of preemptively fought back against the nobles, killed lots of people. Voltaire, one of the philosophes, the big thing he was fighting for was what? Yeah, freedom of speech. That might not agree with the word you say, but I'll defend my death your right to say it. He was a satirical writer too. Was meant to be very funny in his writings, but just like we saw with some of the previous instances of satire, the targets of his satire didn't always find it very humorous. That's why he got thrown in jail several times. And he was targeted quite a few. So that was in the video we saw in the French Revolution when they were trying to eliminate a lot of church influence. And so church officials, one of the things that Robespierre and the Jacobins did was they would round up the church officials, put them on a boat, chain them together, and then sink the boat, therefore killing the people on board, drowning them. I'm not going to ask a specific question about that in the test, though. 170. All essay. 170 essay questions. Ready? Go. Starts off, I think it's like about 80 or 90 multiple choice questions. And there's maybe 40 or 50 or so matching questions. There are maybe about, I don't know, 20 or so true-false questions. And then, here you guys get a little peek at this, there's going to be a section of chronological order on there, putting events in the order in which they happened, spanning the entire semester. So think of some of the major events. You can go and kind of look at the study guide, pick up the big ones. Storming of the Bastille, we know that was one of the big ones. Martin Luther's 95 Theses was a big one, and think about the order. So I've got 10 events. I'm going to put 10 events in order. This happened first, this happened second, all through 1 through 10.
So is it like the important dates from all the things you've learned, or
Yep.
just like this section?
Whole thing. But that should make it easier. The storming of the Bastille had to happen before the English Civil War. Sometimes, but I tried to keep that in mind when I picked the events. All right. I still have hands up. That means people still want to have some more questions. So if you need to leave, that's fine. But let's be quiet and get the questions in. On the notes. Oh, okay. Yes. All right. Yeah. So this was one of the ways that showed that a lot of these explorers, these conquistadors, very much cared about religion. They made sure that, we've got soldiers, check, cooks, check, builders, check, priests, check. And so that said, hey, religion's important. The fact that they made sure priests were on board their crew. And so that's kind of one of those pieces of evidence that you would, put out there to show and prove that, yes, religion was an important thing to them. They did care about it. Erasmus, so again, we're at the Christian humanist movement. Erasmus was the guy that wrote The Praise of Folly, speaking of satire like Voltaire, poked a lot of fun at the Catholic Church. It was meant to help the Catholic Church, but like we said before, the targets of the satire rarely find that humorous. Thanks to our president-elect and Saturday Night Live, there's a good example. He does not like it when Saturday Night Live makes fun of him. And that's the same thing. A lot of times, the people that get made fun of get kind of offended. In this case, Erasmus, the church, was the group that was offended at his satire. Same thing like before, kind of understand the big picture of what's happening, but I'm not going to ask a specific question about that now. Yep. And this is specific places like Jamestown, Plymouth, Massachusetts Bay Colony, some of those would be important to know as well. Yeah. Only one we looked at, I think, was Montreal. That was the one I looked at in Quebec. Easier to defend. That was a way to kind of make it easier to defend itself. That was basically it. Yes, so the Inca just got done with a civil war, and he was kind of the victor of the civil war and was allowed, or kind of that's how he assumed power. And then Pizarro came along. Northwest Passage, so this was supposed to be kind of a shortcut the French were looking for. Because previously, if you were going to try to sail from Europe west, there's a big landmass in the way. It's called America. And so what previously like Magellan had to do was sail west and then south around South America over. What the French were hoping to find was a quicker way, instead of going south, going north, going kind of up around what we know today as Canada. And so as they were searching for this Northwest Passage, a quicker way around this American landmass, this is how people like Cartier and Champlain and Verrazano discovered what we know today as Canada. Spanish are the ones they really hoping to avoid, yeah. Anything else? I got about 10 more minutes if you need it. I want to say hi to the people listening at home. We good? You feel better? All right. This will be up online pretty soon. If you want to listen to it again, if that'll help you review. All right.